From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
And hi again. Welcome to the show. So Bill Daley's walked away from the governor's race, and the political types have all been analyzing away. But, I was surprised to find myself understanding that decision of his and feeling a little bit sympathetic. Bill Daley and I are the same age, and like most 1940s and early 50s boomers, we've all had multiple careers. He's had lots and lots of successes in his life. I can't compare myself to him, of course, and wouldn't, but I found some professional happiness in several fields too. The problem is what happens when you edge toward the end of your most productive work years and you wonder what happened and all those assumptions you've been carrying around with you about the things you're going to do. Mark Brown took it on yesterday in a really interesting way in his column where he made reference to imagining someday maybe being an editor. And this is the part where I have the nerve to compare myself with Bill Daley, because like him, there was always this little part of me that always imagined running for political office someday, setting aside for a moment that I had no access to money or a political base, obviously the things that he did. But I've always been drawn to the allure of that completely naive idea that there's the debate on the floor of the House or the City Council, and I want to be part of that debate. But political careers are generally started a little earlier in life, and they require a skill set and a personality that's a lot different from being in the business or being in media, and they require that slavish devotion to fundraising. So one day you wake up and you think, oh, wow, it looks like I'm never going to be a state senator or an alderman or governor in his case. And if you're lucky, you can tie into that perspective with all the other things that you've done and all the blessings you have in your life and say, hey, you know what, I think I'm okay with that decision. But I understand Bill Daley's decision, and I think he should be respected for being honest with us about it. It's a good thing he figured this all out now, because I just could imagine him sitting at the big office one day embroiled in some debate about the budget and sitting there thinking, wow, I really long for the good old days at J.P. Morgan Chase. So anyway, on today's show, we're going to talk about buses on Ashland. We're going to talk about the Midway lease. We're going to talk about, the Burge apology, a million other things. And we just got two very good, knowledgeable guys with us. Hal Dardick hasn't been here for a long time. Hal, from the Chicago Tribune, glad to have you back.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for coming. And the first timer, Shamus Toomey, managing editor at DNAInfo, one of our favorite operations in Chicago. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And we could start, I guess, with sort of like my sort of long-winded acceptance of Bill Daley there, but. Do you guys have any sense of this about politically what this means? Will it affect the governor's race in any really serious way?
I think that the biggest thing that Bill Daley did was he elevated the word enormity to an everyday word in the Illinois political lexicon.
Right. He did, didn't he? Yeah.
So it's changed that, the use of language. No, I think there was a column done by John Cass at the Tribune yesterday. He said that the Republicans is going to be a lot more focused on the Republican candidates for governors, four guys, and everyone's going to be focused on them rather than this sort of big name marquee race with Bill Daley in it. So I think people will be paying a lot more attention to that. And certainly the advantage to Governor Quinn is that he doesn't have to spend a lot of money and say a lot of things that could get him in trouble.
Which he's good at.
During the primary campaign, assuming that there is no one else that enters at the last minute.
Keeps his powder dry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it clears the field for the governor. And I mean, that's just, the money alone that he's going to be able to stockpile and use against the Republicans. That's a huge part of it. Again, like Hal said, not having to beat each other up for months and months and months, and he can aim all his barbs at the Republicans. The Republicans are already turning on each other now because they know, like, okay, the spotlight's on us now. Let's start hitting each other and make a name for ourselves.
But I am kind of fascinated though by the whole Bruce Rauner thing. That weird quote that Bill Daley gave Snead yesterday about, I think it looks good for Bruce Rauner. I mean, I can't remember exactly what the quote was, but it was a kind of an acknowledgement that he doesn't think Quinn's going to win and that Bruce Rauner is a good, strong candidate. And of course, we all know that our mayor is tied very closely with Bruce Rauner, and I'm sure our mayor would probably rather see Bruce Rauner as governor than Quinn. He'd probably work better with him. I don't know, maybe that's going a little far, but it's sort of like they're kind of cut from the same cloth. It's like, I'm wondering if there isn't, we've talked about before about how there was this kind of general collective thought that I think a lot of Chicagoans had that, hey, this guy we're going to vote in as mayor, he's not from the old school. He's not from Bridgeport. He doesn't have all these ties to the ward soups and all that. He's coming in with his own money. He's his own guy. He's going to come in and sweep things clean. And I think you could observe that kind of is what happened, but then a lot of people, when he started doing that, thought, wait a minute, this isn't what we wanted. So whether that has any effect on a guy like Bruce Rauner coming in at the statewide level and saying, I'm the same guy, I have my own money, I'm not politically connected, just vote for me and I'll clean everything up.
I think that that's his allure, and he's of course got this super PAC that he created to have term limits, basically throw the bums out sort of platform that he's running on. And so he is certainly trying to build that image, but he's also, it's interesting to watch these guys. You see a lot of wealthy people come into politics and they don't always succeed, and more often than not, they don't. I mean, there's Michael Bloomberg, is an exception to that. But they don't know the game, they say the wrong things, and government is not a business, but at the same time, you're seeing a lot of influence among these financial people. I mean, Mayor Emanuel was part of that world for a while. Bill Daley was part of that world, and they all sort of think they can do a better job of running government. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's interesting. They do have the wherewithal. They don't have to sit on the sidelines. If they've got great ideas, they don't need to just tell their friends at the parties, like, if I was the governor, this is what I'd do. He'd say, you know what, I can afford to do this, and I'm going to do it.
I think I'll purchase that office.
Yeah, and it injects a lot of new ideas into the race, a lot of intrigue, who's supporting who really, who's the Republican.
Right.
And, the idea that having a Democrat in Springfield is going to be great for Chicago, and it's going to make everything go smoothly. I think we're discovering that. We all know that's not necessarily the case. One of the columnists, I think it was Cass or Brown yesterday, made the point that some of the actual best progress we've made in getting things done in Chicago is when there was a Republican down in Springfield, George Ryan and Rich Daley. They worked pretty well together.
They were real bosom buddies, those two. Yeah. Well, it's just a kind of a favorite observation of mine that the world of being a big-time CEO and being a mayor or a governor, they appear to be very similar, but they're not. And you can't just call people in your office and say, get that done or you're fired, because they're an elected official. So
right, and the motive isn't profit.
Right. That's the big difference. Right. The motive is delivering service, and you only deliver if your world is that you only deliver service if it pays. Then that's a whole lot different than if you have to pick up garbage for a living or something. Anyway. Where do you want to? What's on your mind? What's the big news this week? Hal, you're in City Hall. What are you thinking about?
Oh, great! No,
it's your turn.
I think that the ramifications of the indictment out in Ohio of former comptroller Amr Ahmad keeps having some reverberations. The mayor said yesterday that he was no longer going to let the comptroller pick insurance independently after there were some questions about some Ohio insurance contracts
that sure didn't last long, huh? Being able to pick your own insurance, that came and went in about a year or so.
It was approved in November of 2011 in the early months of the Emanuel administration. So I think that's a story that so far, fortunately, that we haven't found that, and no one's found that Ahmad did anything wrong in his time in Chicago, but that's of course being investigated by auditors. It's being looked at, of course, by the Sun-Times, Chicago Tribune. I'm sure DNAInfo's probably got a hand in that. And so, I think that's something to watch closely to see if it damages the chief financial officer, Lois Scott, who originally recommended him for the job, even after, as we found out, there had been subpoenas issued in Ohio at the time. The mayor says he knew nothing about it, but that's sort of an odd thing, a guy that so prides himself on what he knows. And and sort of being master of the political universe, and he didn't know that, so that's an awkward position for the mayor.
And the story itself for political junkies is interesting because it's really showing this pipeline between Ohio and Chicago that a lot of people may not have known. That they're all coming here, with ideas of getting involved in the bond business, and it's been fascinating of some of the records that the Tribune has been pouring through and telling great stories with.
Yeah. So at this point though, it doesn't appear that Lois Scott's in trouble. She's going to be able to hold on to her job, most likely.
Well, the mayor gave her a vote of confidence, although one of the bloggers, I think it was Chicagoist, said that she got the dreaded vote of confidence. because Mayor Daley used to do that all the time. Oh, I'm behind this person, and bam, they're gone. So,
Friday afternoon, they're gone.
Yeah, and the old joke is you have to check Snead in the morning to see if the press office has leaked that you're out of your job, because that's how the personnel stuff is handled at those.
Right.
Those
Although,
levels.
to be fair, a lot of folks say that she's a very talented woman, really knows the business well, and certainly nothing's been found to implicate that she did anything wrong.
Okay. Well, we'll see where that goes.
But it's tough.
Yeah. Though there are some of those stories that just kind of unfold very slowly, and it's really important to sort of stay with them and stay on top of them. We were talking earlier about this. Another one of these kind of slowly unfolding stories, this slow-moving bus along Ashland Avenue that they want to speed up. You guys have been all over that, and it's a fascinating story because this is a collision of do-gooders, really, right? I mean, who doesn't want to have improved transit service on that corridor?
It's a fascinating story. I mean, the idea behind it is you put. It's called Bus Rapid Transit.
BRT.
BRT. We're trying to ban the word BRT in our stories because it looks like brat. So the Bus Rapid Transit, it's an express bus. It wouldn't take the place of the number 9 up and down Ashland, but it would be up better. It would be like the Evanston Express compared to the Red Line. The idea is it goes 5.4 miles from 31st Street on the south side to Cortlandt on the north side, cutting through all those neighborhoods that it cuts through. But it's a 2-lane street, 2 lanes in each direction. You're going to take away 1 lane, and it's going to be exclusively for this bus, leaving everyone else to fight for space in that other lane. But the thing that really gets me is, intrigues me, is that the idea is you're not going to be able to turn left from that 1 lane, except for 4 or 5 different spots, particularly to get on the expressways you pass. Well, when you play that out, you think, well, how am I going to turn left? And it's got a lot of people along the route a little freaked out because they're playing this out in their own mind, and they think, okay, well, the way I'd do it is I would take a right into the neighborhood after the big street, take another right, and then I get to go straight on the arterial going through, and they're thinking they're going to go through my neighborhood.
3 rights.
Right,
they're going
to go through, and Chicago drivers are very creative. They'll find their ways. I'm sure some of them will turn left in front of the bus. They turn right in front of the bus now. So it's this sort of this percolating debate for, like you said, a pretty good idea. Like, hey, let's get more people out of their cars and into buses, reduce, potentially reduce congestion a little bit. We'll see how that works. And but I think the people are starting to learn about it and say, whoa, wait a minute, let's take a longer look.
We see that happen so often when an idea is kind of dropped and is dropped on the public, and people don't react to it right away until it gets really closer to the reality stage, and then you start asking the question, how will this affect me, me, and then you find out, wait a minute, this is going to really affect me.
So a lot of the chambers in the area, the business owners, aren't necessarily real keen on this idea. I think you're going to see a lot of opposition, orchestrated opposition, popping up.
But they can't take away parking spaces, right? Because the parking meter agreement won't allow that.
I believe that's right. I don't know if they amended that clause.
It would allow it, but they'd have to find other spaces elsewhere to make up for the revenue. It's very difficult to do. Yeah. So the plan is, they could have taken out the parking lane, but instead they're going to have 1 lane of traffic in each direction.
Well, we wouldn't want to inconvenience Laz parking after all that. Well, all right, so we don't know where that's going to go, but it is really heating up now, because now you're having the public sessions and people are getting pretty hot about it. So
But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's when people start to hear the details. How does this impact me?
Right.
We're a neighborhood news site, so we're focusing
Yes.
on different neighborhoods. And as we go to these meetings along different neighborhoods,
Yeah.
and we kind of see the dawning on people like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
wait, this thing. It's not just brown lanes and
Right.
stations in the center.
Right,
It's
right,
me not
right,
having to
right.
be able to turn left for 5 miles.
Well, as long as we're on the hyper-local angle, there's this other thing that's really interesting up in Horner Park with the trees along the river where the Army Corps of Engineers and a friend of mine said the lesson is never let the Army Corps of Engineers do your prairie restoration project, because they'll come in with the military approach, they'll clear cut everything and then ask questions later. Well, that's kind of what was going to happen up there, right? They were going to cut down pretty much all the trees for many blocks.
Right, and the idea is they're trying to restore the banks of the river here, and a lot of it is getting rid of the invasive stuff, the buckthorns, for example, giving a chance for the native species to take over again. The problem was, as lousy as those buckthorns are, you're never going to get anyone cheering for them unless they block the light from the local park that shines across the river into your windows. And believe me, if this was shining into my window, I would think twice about whether this is a good idea also. I've got a street light that shines into my window at home, and I'm thinking, God, what could I do to move that thing down the block? So the idea is, so people again got wind of this about how extensive these cut downs were going to go, and they were up in arms at a meeting that we were at, and sort of adding a little bit to the buzz of the story. Is Lisa Madigan lives in this area, and from her own analysis, and she made a point to say, I'm a private citizen in this matter. I'm not acting as the Attorney General of the state of Illinois, but her take
Hard
on
to forget.
Yeah, right. Right, is that she wanted them to take a closer look at whether this all needed to be done, and sure enough, they took a closer look, and they're going to cut it back to, so to speak, far fewer trees.
Yeah. And one of my other things, I'm a volunteer up at the Jarvis Bird Sanctuary up by the totem pole up on Addison, and we have a crew there, and we face a lot of these same issues. It's like you have a natural area, and you have to occasionally take some trees down because you need to open up the canopy. You're always fighting buckthorn and invasives, but it's a tough and emotional issue, and there have been a lot of things we've seen in past years, certainly in the forest preserves up on the northwest side, where they've gone in and really cleared this stuff out, and people get very emotional about it. But then it's like the Ashland bus. It's like how do you take the much greater need to, in this case, restore the riverbank, which it desperately needs to have done, or to put better transit on Ashland Avenue, versus the needs of the people who are exactly inconvenienced, who are right there. And I guess it's one of those things in our society we'll never resolve it. It's been with us as long as there's been democracy.
And that's where the compromise comes in, that maybe you don't get exactly what you want, but we're going to find something that everyone can live with, or else it never happens.
Yeah, I think it goes back to sort of human nature. People are resistant to change, even if what they got used to wasn't really what belonged there, and it doesn't do the environment much good. Right. They got used to it and they liked it.
And it's what you have. Yeah. So I don't know. I want to talk about Midway, but I don't. Is it? Can we talk about Midway for just a few minutes? I mean, I'm curious about.
We can talk about it for 40 years.
Well, we talked. That's exactly right.
39.
I was around when Jane Byrne tried to sell it, and that was a huge. Oh my God, that was a big deal. But is this an opportunity that has just completely passed? It doesn't seem like there's going to be an opportunity to privatize it again anytime in the near future. And is that a good or a bad thing?
There probably won't be another opportunity in the near future. The FAA had one experimental spot for a city to apply for, and Chicago was picked to apply for that. And now that the mayor says I'm not going to do it any time in the foreseeable future, I'm sure they're going to probably parcel out that opportunity to some other municipality in the United States. So no, it's not going to happen in the near future. And it's a real mixed bag. I think the mayor probably did what he had to do. There was one bidder left, and as we know, the parking meter lease was so controversial and so poorly executed, and has been kind of a nightmare for the city, that everyone's just questioning every deal. And if he came back and said, well, this was our only bidder, we got to take it or leave it, he would have fought a huge battle, and he might not have got the best deal for the city. But you know, the thing that they lose out on is they were able to take every penny that is now made at Midway goes back into Midway.
That's by law.
That's
right?
by law. Yeah, it's not just city ordinance or anything. It's the way the FAA makes them run the airport. But part of privatizing it would have involved paying off this $1.4 billion in existing debt, and that would have been the initial payment by this company that was still left in the bidding, and then the city would have shared profits. And then what you can do when you get those profits is you can take them and spend them on infrastructure, and he could have taken up to 50% of those profits and used it to pump that into pension funds.
Okay.
So if he came to a deal, changes in the pension system that the unions and the city agreed on, the city's going to have to come up with some more money because they're so far behind, no matter how much the union gives or the General Assembly imposes on them.
And we're not just talking here teachers, we're talking fire, police.
Yeah, fire, police, municipal workers, laborers, all of that. In fact, it would have had to be for those four funds. The Chicago Public Schools is a different animal. But he could have used that money to up the ante and make a deal. That's lost now. You know.
But it does sound like he probably made the right decision, though. I mean, he didn't. His hands were pretty much tied. He didn't really have a lot of other options.
I think Hal's right. I mean, I don't think you do a project of this magnitude with one bidder.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the leverage is lost. Right. Just the whole smell test that when you bring it before the city council, when you bring it for the taxpayers.
And it's weird. It's like I mean, obviously we all know that if it got privatized, then the price of everything at the airport is going to go up. Parking, food, all that is going to go up because the private operator is going to jack it up to the market level. And it's kind of a weird thing about how I guess I came to appreciate the value of a parking space in Chicago after parking spaces were because it's like I kind of got the idea that paying $2 or $2.50 for an hour downtown is really not that bad a deal. But my only problem is I wish that money was going back into the city to do something at the city. So all of that is just, I guess it's just gone, and that's until next time. Something.
To your great grandchildren.
Right. So. I'm just throwing stuff out here because I've just got this huge list of things I want to talk about, and of no particular interest to Chicago other than just the fascination of it is this whole Capitol architect thing with the copper doors and all that. In your newspaper, Blair Kamen wrote a very full-throated defense of the architect, which I thought was very well written, by the way, and I thought it was a
fine journalist.
Well, he is, and I thought it was a great defense of the architect, and it really does kind of tie to go all the way back to the Pat Quinn thing we were talking about earlier. This shoot first and ask questions later notion of his is really weird. I mean, how could he works in the Capitol building. He has known that there's been renovation going on at the Capitol building for 4 years. I mean, wouldn't you just once in a while say, hey, this looks interesting. Can I have a little tour, behind the scenes, show me what you're doing? And all the legislative leaders who signed off on it. So there's nobody who can say they didn't know this was happening. And besides that, isn't it really actually a good thing? I mean, isn't it a good thing to treat our House of the People well and to want to refurbish it?
Go ahead.
Oh,
you were nodding yes.
Well, no, I mean, in theory, yes. I mean, this is one of the most beautiful buildings in the state of Illinois. You want to keep it going. You want to make it as beautiful as it once was and keep it going for future generations. Inspire kids, inspire lawmakers to do the right thing under the dome. But we can't forget, Illinois is in just a horrendous spot at this point. And so the optics of these doors and that price tag, I mean, you can't ignore that price tag. And you know how the public is, and newspapers and websites are the same way. You need something to point at as sort of the poster child for why this is a bad thing. And those doors, they're beautiful. Mm-hmm. I mean,
you'd like to have mine.
I'm not an architect.
Yeah.
But when you start comparing that price tag to everything that's going unfunded, it's very hard to stand up there and defend the doors. And I think Mark Brown made a good point about these robed maidens that are inside there as well, and that they're going back, that they weren't even there. They're going back to the original design from 125 years ago. That was rejected because it was too racy. And so now I'm thinking, do we really need
robed maidens?
The robed maidens.
Yeah, and the very idea of copper-coated doors, it just sort of has a bad resonance, copper-coated doors. But it is the perception of it all at a time when they can't figure out how to fix the state's pension funds, and the state's behind in payments to people that are, caring for the elderly and the mentally disabled and everything else.
Well, there's no question about that. I mean, I get it. I get that argument.
But yeah, should the outrage that you're talking about that the governor expressed? Well, that's interesting. He had to read the newspaper to find out.
Well, find out that his building was being rehabbed.
Yeah.
So where's the fiscal responsibility in that? No more gun registry in Chicago. Gun registry is over.
Yeah, it is. After it was, it extends way back, I think, to like 1968, and the gun registry was the tool that was used to ban handguns in the city, because then you could no longer register your handguns after a certain point. I think in the Jane Byrne administration, and then it was used to do the recent effort to have people get firearm permits once it was clear. The Supreme Court said you had to be allowed to own a handgun. So because of the ruling on concealed carry at the state level that will allow people to get permits to actually carry weapons, provided they pass background checks and so forth, the city had to go back and change its laws to comply with that. So the registry is history. It's an era long gone. People like to point to Chicago and say, well, they had all these handgun rules, and yet there's still a high level of violence, and they couldn't get under. I don't know that the handgun regulations in the city were ever anything more than symbolic, or a tool for politicians to say they were trying to do something about violence, because guns cross borders.
We have literally 10 seconds to deal with this, but the FBI's out with some numbers that Chicago's, tell us quickly what that is about per capita.
Well, we've known Chicago has the highest number of homicides. We had 506, 500 last year. When you do it by per capita, when you do it by population, we fall to about 12, which is something that that people do point out. With Detroit up there and number one, and it's just it doesn't take away from the fact that we're still losing people, but it depends how you look at the numbers.
We're number 14. Thank you so much, guys. We're out of time. Shamus Toomey from DNAInfo Chicago. Sorry, right. Here for the first time. Glad to have you here, and Hal Dardick. We hope you'll come back many, many, many times. Chicago Tribune, edited from the City Hall. You've been watching Chicago Newsroom. It's the community service of CAN TV, and you can watch us here all the time on cable, but you can also go to the very address that you are about to see pop up on your screen, and you can watch us anytime on iTunes, and I hope you will do that. I'm Ken Davis. Thanks so much for watching us. We will be back here, whether you like it or not, next week at the same time with another show on Chicago Newsroom. Thanks. Bye.